Have you ever noticed how the people who are always available, always saying yes, always there for everyone, somehow get the least respect? While those who guard their time, who aren't always at everyone's beck and call, seem to command more attention, more value, more influence? It's counterintuitive, isn't it? We're taught that being helpful, accessible, and available makes us valuable. But what if I told you that Carl Jung, one of the most profound psychologists in history, discovered something completely opposite? What if your constant availability isn't making you indispensable, it's making you invisible? Today, we're diving deep into a psychological principle that could completely transform how people see you, how you see yourself, and ultimately the quality of your entire life. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why stepping back might be the most powerful step forward you ever take. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is where we explore deep psychological concepts and ancient wisdom that can actually transform your modern life. Today's topic is something I wish someone had told me years ago. We're going to explore Carl Jung's profound insights on availability, presence, and personal value. But this isn't just theory. We're going to break down exactly what happens in your relationships, your career, and your internal world when you stop being so available. Jung understood something fundamental about human nature, that our psyche operates on principles of energy, value, and exchange. And one of the most overlooked truths is this: constant availability depletes your psychological energy and diminishes your perceived value in the eyes of others. But here's what's fascinating. When you reclaim your availability, when you create boundaries around your time and energy, something almost magical happens. Not just externally, but internally. Your entire psychological landscape shifts. So let's break this down. We're going to explore 5 major transformations that occur when you stop being so available, all rooted in Jungian psychology. And I promise you, each one will give you a completely new perspective on how you show up in the world. Let's start with something Jung understood deeply: the relationship between scarcity and value. Jung studied symbols, archetypes, and human behavior for decades. One pattern he observed consistently was that humans assign greater value to what is rare, what is difficult to obtain. This isn't just about material things. This applies profoundly to human attention, time, and presence. Think about it. Water is essential for life, but it's abundant, so we barely think about it. Diamonds, not essential at all, but rare, so we treasure them. The same psychological principle applies to your availability. When you're always available, always responding immediately, always canceling your plans for others, always being the yes person, you become like water. Essential maybe, but taken for granted. People stop appreciating your presence because they assume it will always be there. Jung called this the problem of inflation in the psyche. When something is overabundant, it loses its numinous quality, its sacred, special nature. Your presence, your time, your attention, these are actually precious resources. But if you give them freely to everyone all the time, they lose their psychological weight. Now here's what happens when you pull back. First, people notice. Suddenly, you're not in their inbox within minutes. You're not always free on Friday night. You're not the first person they can dump their problems on at 11 p.m. And this creates something Jung understood: psychological tension. That tension makes people curious. Where is this person? What are they doing? Why aren't they as available as they used to be? Second, your value perception shifts. In Jung's framework, we all carry what he called the persona, the mask we show to the world. When your persona is always available, people unconsciously categorize you as lower status, not because you're less capable, but because high-status individuals throughout history have always been characterized by selective availability. Think about it. The CEO doesn't have an open-door policy for everyone. The master doesn't teach every student. The sage doesn't dispense wisdom to anyone who asks. When you become more selective with your availability, you're unconsciously communicating, my time has value, my energy has worth, and I'm choosing consciously where to invest it. This isn't manipulation. This is healthy psychological boundaries. Jung believed that individuation, The process of becoming your true self requires you to stop living according to everyone else's demands and start honoring your own psychological needs. The transformation here is profound. You shift from being a resource that others extract value from to being a source of value that people respect and appreciate. And that shift changes everything. Now let's talk about what Jung considered one of the most crucial aspects of psychological health, your psychic energy, or what he called libido. Most people think libido is just about sexual energy, but Jung defined it much more broadly. Libido is your life force, your creative energy, your capacity to engage with the world. And here's the critical insight: it's finite. Every interaction, every conversation, every commitment requires an investment of this energy. When you're constantly available to everyone, you're fragmenting this energy across dozens, maybe hundreds of different directions. Jung observed that this leads to what he called psychological dissociation. You become scattered. Part of your energy is tied up in that friend's drama, another part is committed to that project you said yes to but don't care about, another chunk is drained by that family member who always needs something. The result? You feel exhausted, but you can't pinpoint why. You feel like you're constantly busy, but not actually accomplishing anything meaningful. You're living everyone else's life except your own. This is where the magic of unavailability comes in. When you stop being so available, something remarkable happens. Your energy returns to you. It's like calling back all those fragmented pieces of yourself that you scattered across other people's needs and demands. Jung would say you're withdrawing your projections. You're pulling back the energy you invested in being everything to everyone, and you're recentering it in your own psyche. And with that returned energy comes clarity. Suddenly you can think more clearly. You have energy for your own projects, your own dreams, your own growth. You're not constantly in reactive mode, responding to everyone else's urgency. I experienced this myself. For years, I was that person everyone could count on, always available, always helpful, and I wore it like a badge of honor, until I realized I had no energy left for my own life. I was building everyone else's dreams while mine collected dust. When I started saying no, when I started creating boundaries around my time, I felt guilty at first, but then something shifted. I had energy in the evenings. I could focus on my creative work. I wasn't constantly drained by everyone else's emergencies. Jung understood that this energy conservation is essential for what he called the opus, the great work of your life. You can't do your great work if all your energy is leaking out through constant availability. The second transformation is this: you become energetically whole again. You're no longer a depleted shell trying to serve everyone. You're a centered, powerful individual with the energy to actually create the life you want. Here's where we get into the heart of Jungian psychology: individuation. Individuation is Jung's term for the process of becoming who you truly are, distinct from the expectations and demands of society, family, and culture. It's the journey toward your authentic self. And here's the crucial connection: you cannot individuate while being constantly available to everyone else. Why? Because constant availability means you're living in reaction. You're responding to external demands rather than listening to your internal voice. You're shaped by what others need from you rather than what your own psyche is calling you toward. Jung believed that society conditions us to develop a strong persona, that social mask, but a weak connection to the self, the true center of your being. The persona says yes because it wants to be liked, to be needed, to avoid conflict. The self knows what you truly value, what you truly need, what your soul is calling for. When you're always available, the persona runs the show. You're performing the role of helpful person or good friend or team player without asking whether this aligns with who you actually are. But when you step back, when you create space by being less available, something extraordinary happens. You hear your own voice again. In that quiet space, the space that opens up when you're not constantly busy with everyone else's needs, your authentic desires emerge. Your true values become clear. You start to ask questions like, what do I actually want? What matters to me, not to everyone else? What kind of life am I actually trying to build here? Jung called this listening to the self, and it's impossible to do when you're drowning in availability. I've seen this transformation countless times. People who were chronic people pleasers, always available, always accommodating. Then they set boundaries. They became less available, and within months they're pursuing passions they'd forgotten about. They're making bold career changes. They're ending relationships that weren't serving them and deepening the ones that truly matter. It's not that they became selfish, they became authentic, and there's a profound difference. Jung understood that authenticity requires solitude, reflection, and the courage to disappoint others. When you're always available, you sacrifice all three. When you reclaim your unavailability, you create the psychological space necessary for your true self to emerge. The third transformation is you stop living as an echo of everyone else's expectations and start living as the unique individual you were meant to be. Now let's talk about what happens to your relationships when you stop being so available. This is where it gets really interesting, and frankly, where it gets uncomfortable for a lot of people. Jung had a fascinating perspective on relationships. He believed that unconscious dynamics drive most of our connections with others. Often, we're not relating to the actual person. We're relating to projections, shadows, and unmet needs. When you're constantly available, you often attract relationships based on utility, not genuine connection. People value you for what you do, not who you are. You become the problem solver, the emotional dumpster, the convenience friend. And here's the painful truth. Many of these relationships are not actually nourishing you. They're draining you. But you can't see it because you're too busy being available. When you pull back, when you become less available, a filter activates. And this filter sorts your relationships into two categories. Category 1, reciprocal relationships. These are the people who respect your boundaries, who value you beyond your usefulness, who actually invest back into the relationship. When you're less available, they don't disappear, they adapt. They respect your time. They show up when it matters. These relationships often deepen when you have boundaries because they're based on mutual respect, not exploitation. Category 2, extractive relationships. These are the people who only valued you for your availability. When you're no longer at their beck and call, they get upset. They guilt trip you. They call you selfish. Or they simply disappear because you're no longer useful to them. And this is the uncomfortable part. You're going to lose some relationships. Some people will fall away when you stop being so available. But Jung would tell you this is necessary. He spoke often about the need to let go of relationships that keep us unconscious, that prevent our growth. These extractive connections are psychological parasites. They take your energy but give nothing back. The transformation here is profound but challenging. Your relationship landscape restructures itself. You might have fewer friends, but the ones who remain are genuine. You might get fewer invitations, but the ones you do get are from people who actually value your presence, not just your service. I went through this myself. When I stopped being available 24/7, I lost about 60% of my friends. It hurt. I felt isolated at first, but what remained? 5 or 6 deep, authentic, reciprocal relationships that have enriched my life beyond measure. And I have the energy to actually nurture them because I'm not spreading myself across 50 superficial connections. Jung understood that quality over quantity applies profoundly to relationships. Better to have a few genuine soul connections than dozens of surface-level utility exchanges. Here's what also happens. New relationships enter your life. When you have boundaries, when you're not constantly available, you attract different people. You attract individuals who respect boundaries, who value depth over convenience, who are also doing their own psychological work. The fourth transformation, your relationship ecosystem upgrades. You trade quantity for quality, utility for authenticity, and unconscious patterns for conscious connection. The final transformation is perhaps the most powerful, the development of what Jung called inner authority. Most people live their entire lives governed by external authority. They do what their parents expect, what society demands, what their friends pressure them into. They're constantly seeking approval, validation, permission from outside themselves. But this external orientation keeps you perpetually available because you're trying to please, to accommodate, to earn worthiness through service and availability. But Jung's entire psychological framework points toward a radical shift, from external authority to inner authority, from living by others' rules to living by your own values, from seeking external validation to trusting your internal compass. And this shift is impossible without unavailability. Here's why. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, you betray your inner authority. You tell yourself what I want doesn't matter as much as what they want. You subordinate your internal knowing to external pressure. But when you start saying no, when you start guarding your availability, you're making a powerful declaration. I trust myself. My time matters. My energy matters. My needs are valid. Each boundary you set is a vote of confidence in your inner authority, and over time, these votes accumulate. You develop what Jung called a strong ego, not in the sense of arrogance, but in the sense of a centered, stable sense of self that doesn't collapse under external pressure. This inner authority transforms how you move through the world. You stop asking permission. You stop seeking constant validation. You stop needing everyone to agree with your choices. You become sovereign over your own life. I cannot overstate how liberating this is. When you develop inner authority, you're no longer controlled by the fear of disappointing others. You make decisions based on alignment with your values, not on avoiding conflict or maintaining your nice person image. Jung believed this was the hallmark of psychological maturity, the ability to stand in your own truth, even when it's unpopular, even when it disappoints others, even when it costs you external approval. And paradoxically, when you develop this inner authority, you often gain more respect externally. People sense your groundedness. They recognize they can't manipulate or guilt trip you. And those who are psychologically healthy actually appreciate your boundaries because they signal self-respect. The fifth and final transformation is you shift from external validation to internal authority, from people-pleasing to self-trust, from fragmentation to integration.
So let's bring this all together. When you stop being so available, 5 major transformations occur. 1. Your perceived value increases as scarcity creates psychological appreciation. 2. Your energy returns to you, allowing you to pursue your own path and purpose. 3. Your authentic self emerges from beneath the persona of constant availability. 4. Your relationships restructure, filtering out the extractive and deepening the authentic. 5. You develop inner authority, trusting yourself more than you fear others' disapproval. Jung understood that becoming who you truly are requires disappointing who others wanted you to be. It requires pulling back from constant availability and creating sacred space for your own psychological development. This isn't about becoming cold or unavailable to everyone. It's about being intentional. It's about recognizing that your time, your energy, your presence are precious and treating them accordingly. The person who is always available is often the person who has abandoned themselves. The person who guards their availability is often the person who has found themselves. So here's my challenge to you. Start small. This week, practice one moment of unavailability. Say no to one request that doesn't align with your values. Create one boundary around your time and notice what happens. Notice the discomfort, notice the guilt, but also notice the power. Notice the energy that returns. Notice the respect that emerges. Your life is not meant to be lived in service to everyone else's agenda. Your psyche has its own wisdom, its own path, its own calling, and it can only speak when you're quiet enough, centered enough, unavailable enough to everyone else to hear it. Carl Jung spent his life helping people wake up to their authentic selves, and one of the most powerful ways to begin that awakening is simply this: stop being so available. Reclaim your time,
reclaim your energy, reclaim yourself. If this video resonated with you, do me a favor, hit that like button. It tells YouTube to share this message with others who need to hear it. And if you want more deep dives into psychology, philosophy, and personal transformation, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. We're building a community of people committed to real growth, not surface-level self-help. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's one area of your life where you need to be less available? Is it work, relationships, social media? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you found this valuable, share it with someone who's drowning in availability. Sometimes the most helpful thing we can do is give someone permission to step back. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, remember, your availability is not your value. Your authenticity is.